This is the app advertising panel. I've got four lovely and brilliant people from across the spectrum of app advertising, all from different sides of the industry, all with a unique perspective, and collectively, hundreds and probably billions of dollars flowing through them, either as buyers or sellers, or maybe both. So, great opportunity to ask them a few questions. So, first of all, just to do the introductions, I'm going to ask each person to introduce themselves and give their one tip for successful app advertising.
Okay, well, thank you. So my name is Jean-Philippe. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Uplift. Just for the people who don't know Uplift, we are an agency dedicated to user acquisition for mobile games. And if right now I had to give one tip for user acquisition, I would say just think of a strategy before spending money. That's a big bag, I know, but well, that would be the first one.
And what do you mean by a strategy?
Just because I see many people just coming to us saying, okay, well, I would like to buy instant traffic or non-instant traffic at that price in this country. But very often they just don't think of their goals, their KPIs, what they want to achieve with their game. And I think it's just very basic, but the first thing to do before thinking of anything else in the end.
Okay.
Hello, my name is... Hello? Can you hear me all right? Okay. So my name is Aurélie. I work at Gamesys as a mobile manager, where basically we look after the promotion of the different games that we have, being social, casual games, and also real money games. And my tip would be slightly different, is more about the tracking and actually be bold in all of your testing, but make sure that you actually track every single event possible inside your app so you understand the value of your users and what value you get from different networks and different source of inventory.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Yann Lechel. I'm co-founder of AppsFire. We're a native ad network for apps. I shall explain that native is actually many things to many people, but we're actually native power of three for native apps, native ad units, and native user experience. So my tip for user acquisition is really actually building up on YouTube, is to say that the strategy has to be based on the actual understanding of the lifetime value. So you need the tracking tools to actually find out what sort of revenue you're likely to make from a user. But also, depending on whether you are an app with in-app purchase or monetized through advertising itself, you need to realize that advertising has a cost to it. So it's very complex. You have to find the hidden costs to actually having bad advertising, which may lead to losing users, and that affects the actual lifetime value and therefore affects your ability to buy users.
Hi, I'm Rob Kramer, General Manager of Mobile for OpenX. And if you're not familiar with OpenX, we're one of the largest digital advertising companies out there. We have a large exchange, an SSP. We power private mobile exchanges for companies like Samsung and AirPush. And my advice would be to, on user acquisition, is to try all the different channels. Outside of Facebook and Twitter, try the exchanges, and also try exploring other methods of acquiring those users, whether it's beyond CPI, because you might find that there's more value in exploring CPM or CPC or even cost per lead.
Okay, so just to give you guys a bit more context, because not people haven't given a presentation, I'm just going to follow up with a quick question for each of the panelists. Starting with Rob, OpenX is obviously a massive player in online advertising, and now here you are today, making some big moves in mobile. What do you think someone that started in online like OpenX and now doing stuff in mobile brings to the table, and how is the market different from what you've seen on the desktop?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, when I joined OpenX a few months ago, probably about 6-7 months ago, we looked really deep into the power of what we were doing on the desktop and how we can actually apply that in mobile. And it was quite interesting because at the root of all of this, it's really, especially as we move to programmatic, those same pipes work very well in mobile, whether it's in-app or even mobile web. So we, you know, really kind of exploring not only leveraging those same pipes, and then extending those pipes to partnerships like I mentioned, Samsung and AirPush, where they can actually build and manage their own exchanges on this infrastructure that we've built on a global scale. We've also realized that other ad formats are going to start to take precedent over standard IEB banners. So we're working on native and video and other ad formats that really can sit on top of that pipe and that infrastructure and very specific to the mobile ecosystem.
And Jan, we had your co-founder Oriol here last year, and at that point AppsFire was predominantly an app discovery app, and you were helping people find cool apps, and now you've pivoted or repositioned yourselves as an ad network, an ad platform. Can you say a bit about, you know, what trends in the market prompted this shift, and you know, why you've made that move?
Well, actually, we've never changed the business model because we've been promoting apps from day one on top of our own inventory, which was our app, up to 13 million users, globally distributed. The app discovery app itself was of great value to our user base, but it turns out that a number of industry players pulled the strings a little too much, and Apple reacted by wanting to slice and dice the app discovery experience by requesting that going forward we start to address discovery on a per niche basis. And in discussions with Apple, it seemed like it was a no future opportunity. In other words, we had 13 million users, we could have grown it to 20, but what we need is 100 million users. So we decided that you know, this was a dead end for us. So we pulled the app from the App Store, relinquishing our own inventory in a way, deciding to focus on building an SDK and help publishers monetize. So that became our indirect inventory. And because we've been a publisher ourselves, we've built into the SDK everything we've learned as a publisher, also trying to acquire users. So we are very much in tune with the DNA of a publisher, trying to monetize, trying to acquire, and we did so by going native.
Okay, and Aurélie, you've worked in a few different companies and startups doing mobile media buying. Probably there's some publishers here that are just starting out. You know, can you say a bit about how you would go about setting up a good team and a good process for doing app advertising in a publisher or developer?
Okay, well, I guess it depends on what sort of budget you have available, because obviously if you can have a team of 10 people doing, you know, being specialists in their own area, so one looking at Facebook, one looking at AirTV, one looking at search, obviously that's the ideal setup. I've been working in a startup, and actually I was a one-man band, one-woman band, and I had to manage everything from network to Facebook to Twitter to any other sorts of inventory, and that comes down to the whole tracking thing, so setting up a few tests, understanding where the value is, and then from that you'll be able to see where you can scale and where it makes sense to spend money and hire a specialist. So that's kind of what we're doing at GameSys, where the mobile team is structured, where we have people that look specifically at Facebook and Twitter, and some people that looks at networks, and some people that look then at RTV, so then, you know, building on the specialism. But yeah, it comes down to the test and learn and see where the money is coming in.
Okay, and last but not least, Jean-Philippe, you know, Uplift, again, was here last year. At that point, you were kind of doing kind of like an affiliate network or CPA-based models for games advertising, and you've become a kind of bigger games marketing platform, and now you're investing in new ad networks. Can you also say a bit about, you know, what you've seen happening in the last year and what's prompted these shifts?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, exactly. Uplift started like 2 years ago as an affiliate network dedicated to mobile games. Then we grew a long way. We had the chance to raise quite a lot of money last year. That gave us like the ability to invest in other areas. So we were focusing on mobile games first, but we also had we saw the opportunity to of other verticals such as dating, utility, etc. So we decided to keep the brand Uplift and to launch another company that is called Uploop, that is doing more or less the same thing as Uplift, but for non-gaming apps. The thing is that since KPIs for gaming and non-gaming are different, we saw really the interest of having a different team, having a deep understanding of how this market is working. And then, very lately, we also launched a new company that is called PubNative, that is very different from what Uplift is doing. But still, this is within Uplift that we saw this opportunity with native ads. So PubNative, in a nutshell, is a mediation platform for publishers dedicated to native ads served through an API.
Okay, so clearly a lot of evolution happening in the market, even in the last year. On the tables, do we have any questions or issues people have found with app advertising, which we can put to the panel? Okay, quite a few. Okay. Can you say just who you are, where you're from?
Yeah. My name is Damon Likely. I'm Managing Director of Genetic Digital. I've got a question with regards to B2B apps. Have you got any insights that you can share with us with regards to effective advertising platforms to promote apps to a more B2B or healthcare professional-oriented audience?
That's a tricky one. Yeah. Well, essentially, it comes down to targeting, right? And some of the platforms will allow very precise targeting. As far as we're concerned, at AppsFire, we wouldn't have that capability, typically, because we're addressing a much larger B2C market through the partners. However, some of our partners will be B2B, essentially, and we may be in a situation where if we bind the supply and the demand in a B2B space, we may be able to address that. But you might have to come to us and bring us the partner.
Okay, next question?
Sure, could I just add to that? In terms of LinkedIn as a network, I mean, again, that seems to be a more effective channel in terms of reaching out to those professionals. In terms of app promotion, have you guys used that particular channel to help promote an app using that network?
I haven't used LinkedIn, but I would say for mobile acquisition, you can think outside of the box, because it's not just by putting a banner on a website that you'll get traffic. Simply having a sticker, if you go to the vet or whatever, and then you'll have a sticker and that'll prompt people to download the app. You won't be able to track it, but it's still a way to drive traffic. The same way you can, sponsor some Wi-Fi areas in cafes or in airports. So it's just thinking outside of the box. There's not only app discovery, or it's not only just Facebook or Twitter or things. There's other kind of interesting things that you can do, marrying the kind of traditional marketing with a mobile call to action.
Hi, I'm Megan from 23 Snaps. As an independent developer, sometimes it can be really hard to differentiate between lots of the different bigger ad networks that are out there and the people that help you run ads on those networks. For someone who's has a limited budget, what would you say is something to look for to help make that decision between what to me might look like some very similar different offerings out there?
Again, it depends on what you want to achieve and what sort of goals and who is your audience.
I like more users.
Sorry?
I like more customers.
Okay, well in that case you can use, the likes of Fixu, for example, is a great example where you put a pot of money into that platform and they kind of do everything for you. Or if you can do it internally, I mean, platforms like Twitter and Facebook are fairly easy to manage and run yourself. And then it's a lot of networking and understanding who does what, and then if you trust someone or you've heard good things from them about them, then you should go and test them.
Also, this is what this is what I was meaning in the very beginning, saying that it's important like to have a good understanding of what is your strategy, because depending on your budget as well, you're not going to address the same channels, right? Because if you're only thinking about your budget and you just want like users, then probably you should run like insane traffic. So you're going to have cheap users, probably they will not retain, but if that's your goal, then that's the right way to go. If you want like really like users that retain well, then will probably monetize in your app or in your game, then you want to look at specific channels and have a deep like ROI campaign, ROI positive campaign, which will obviously be more expensive.
And also, I think there's a short-term opportunity here. You were mentioning earlier 200 networks, and so where you could target native ad networks, and there are very few of those right now. So it simplifies the equation. Talk to me.
Yeah, and I think I would add to JC's point as far as once you have your strategy, then explore all the sort of different DSPs that can get you access to that broader exchange or ad network landscape. So finding a good DSP, I think, is also really important.
Just following up on the native point, so this seems to be the big kind of buzz at the moment. Everyone's launching mobile native units, maybe 10 or even 15 different launches in the last 6 months. What's the role of a native ad unit, if any, in user acquisition and performance advertising?
If I may. The banner has been designed for the web and has been transposed to the mobile device. And here we're talking about the small mobile, we're not talking about the tablets. And there's fatigue, the banner itself eats up the space where it's not wanted. People click by error, there's fraud, there's quite a bit of that. So native will essentially try to find a better fit. But the reality also, and this is me being facetious, advertising is about surprising the users, right? So it's about capturing the attention of a would-be consumer. And native is a novelty, so it will capture the attention. It will work better in the same way that Twitter, launching its new product, will capture the attention of its users. So there is a short-term opportunity to target those novelties, much like Facebook was a novelty a year and a half ago. So, being facetious, native is definitely something to look at right now. But also, by the virtue of the bar being raised in terms of the user experience and so on, native is trying to address that from the standpoint of the user that we care so much about, right? So if we try to cater to their user experience, then we'll provide better return, both for the advertisers and the publishers.
Yeah, I'd also confirm that. And we launched our native exchange back in February at Mobile World Congress, and we saw a significant increase in CTR, so higher engagement. And what we learned was that publishers, to your point about having fatigue in the banner, also from a design perspective, they're redesigning their apps around the new iOS and Android, which is more flat, right? So it gives you the ability to do some really interesting user experience. So it allows the publisher to really kind of merge the CMS with the ad server. So you get the combination of the two, and from the publisher's perspective, it gives them a better return and better value of that inventory. And then from the advertiser's perspective, they get a higher CTR and a better engagement rate.
Yeah, I think for the advertiser, to be very honest, it's interesting for the CTR and probably for the conversion rate. But in terms of like real monetization or retention, we just don't know. I mean, nothing proves that a banner will work less than a native ads. So, but I see the real interest of native ads really for the publisher, not so much for the advertiser, to be very honest, and not for every publisher as well. I mean, only publisher who really care about their user experience, who want to really monetize with advertising and have it like fitting their app, the look and feel of the app, this will be interesting for them. But I also know many other publishers. I was talking with a lot of game publishers, like doing quiz games, for instance. They prefer video ads and full page interstitial rather than native ads because it works better for them in terms of monetization. So it all depends on what makes sense.
Okay, we had someone very patient there at the front who's had his hand up a few times, so we reward the patience with a question.
Thank you. I'm Mats Rohne, CMO at Readly International. I think we all know about the issues about bots and frauds and so on when it comes to traditional digital marketing. How much should we worry about fraudulent data when it comes to app downloads?
As far as getting users to click on the install?
Well, just at since there's so many sort of stages in data reporting, how much should we worry as an advertiser about getting the right value and sort of that downloads of apps actually are downloads of apps and not just created by bots or some other way?
That's a great point. So at OpenX, we had similar issues on desktop where really ad quality became a problem, right? So people were doing things around fraudulent activity with bots. And so what we put in place in the exchange is the ability to actually detect that activity and shut it down at the source. So we're taking that same technology and bringing it programmatically into mobile so it doesn't happen.
I think that's a very interesting topic because especially for people who don't have like a big team in order like to handle like user acquisition, it's important. Like I would always recommend to go to an agency and people you really trust in order for them to do the work for you. Because in the end, like checking fraud, and there are like many different fraud that can happen when you buy users, it's very important to make sure that you're buying what you're paying. And that would be my advice, because you need like really a lot of people. I know that at Uplift we have a team of 5 people who only like focus on this and make sure that we buy, we pay what we buy and not anything else.
And I think it's important to require, especially if you're dealing with an ad network directly, like we are, to require samples of how it's being displayed, in which contexts, demand accurate reporting, and you can also demand a dual reporting. We provide our own, but then you can also work with all these tracking solutions like mobile ad tracking or AppsFlyer and whatnot. We're compatible with them, so there's no reason why you can't have your own particular tracking and correlate it with what you're buying.
I just wanted to, a download doesn't mean a user. I mean, especially when you're looking at doing a ranking boost, for example, as we call it, where you want to buy as many downloads as possible because that boosts, your ranking in the App Store, and therefore you have more visibility, and we know the story, where we know that what we're buying is not going to be a great user, it's not going to convert. So again, it comes down to knowing what you want, and if you're after the downloads, then you just know that it's not going to convert. So it comes back to the strategy and to the tracking, I think. And
you need to leverage those tools that let you do cohort analysis, so that you know that this purchase in this day actually converts to this sort of transaction down the line. So the tools are there.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? Okay, yep, there's one there. Question time style, gentleman in the sort of, I'm not even sure what colour it is, shirt.
Hi, I'm Bob from Absinthe. We're an agency managing kind of apps for our clients. A couple of the apps we represent are paid applications, and we've really been trying to figure out, can advertising be an acquisition solution for paid apps? Can it be done profitably? Whether it's these are paid apps with no actual further monetization kind of following that initial download. Have you guys seen any success advertising paid apps?
Great question.
To be honest, not really. We've tried in the beginning, and it was just not working. I mean, most of the users in the end, they're expecting like free apps, especially like on ads. It's already quite hard to make them like click on the ad and install it. So for a paid app, it's even harder. But there are many other channels to promote like your paid app. I think that PR is definitely like something that is very interesting. Also, usually when you have a paid app, you are targeting like a specific audience. I know that's like for games at least. It's very often IPs, big IPs. So you do your promotion very differently. Maybe also like a boost could help in the beginning, because you don't need like so many downloads in order like to achieve the top. So trying to buy like more or less incentivized downloads could be a solution as well. But traditionally, not so much.
But typically what really works in that space is to organize a price drop during the campaign. And that sort of works to actually get the solution known and create some sort of a momentum. We've also advertised tier 1 applications around $1, and we see that there's a definite drop in the conversion rate and the CTR as well. So at some point it can be monetized. We'll probably charge more as an arbitrage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions on app advertising? There's one over there, the gentleman with the beard.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tuomo from Rovio, and we are doing paid acquisition to some extent, and as we all know, it's not that easy to make it in a profitable manner. And when it comes to mobile environments, on the desktop side, we were able to track post-impression assisted leads 5-7 years ago. But coming to mobile side, it seems to be very hard when you want to use third-party tracking and not rely on native SDKs like with Facebook. What do you think is the importance of post-impression tracking when it comes to actually evaluating the total effectiveness of paid acquisition activities? And I know this is a complicated question, but for example, when comparing different ad types like video and traditional banner, I think the video will have much larger effect on user behavior, even though the user doesn't click on the actual ad. And we are here talking about post-click activities, or how the users behave when they have clicked the ad. But in the desktop, for example, it's estimated that 14 to 20% of all the users are responsible for all the clicks. So we want to concentrate on post-impression tracking and getting to figure out the number of assisted leads per campaign. What are your thoughts on that one? Do you think it's important at all?
I think it's not important. And I think that the only companies that's trying to address this is mobile apps tracking. They're the only ones doing multi-attribution that I know of. And I don't find it to be, in a way, we're in the business of performance advertising. So mathematically, we think we should attribute and compute assists and redistribute the value. But in the end, the question talks about branding. So if there's going to be a brand and there's going to be momentum around the brand and the object being advertised, that is very hard to actually compute. It's brand advertising, so it's not performance-based, in my view.
Let me disagree with you.
Okay.
If we know that a certain device has been delivered 5 ad impressions, and the user doesn't click once, but still he converts,
yes.
I think that's part of performance advertising measurement, because then we should attribute the lead to all of those different ads that the user has seen, even though he has not clicked those in the past. The question is more, but you still don't think it's important to measure those impressions?
No, I think given the context, it's not, it's important, but probably not realistic. In other words, today the standard is the last click attribution, right? But then the market is not organized enough and doesn't have a global standard on this multiple attribution and redistribution, that typically it's not going to happen. That's my view. So unless someone really takes care, maybe mobile apps tracking starts to organize redirecting of the value to the different stakeholders, it's not going to happen.
It's very sad to hear that kind of reply, but I'm happy for your honesty, so thanks.
Well, maybe one person or a couple of people here you might want to try and find. There's a couple of people here from Rocket Internet, and I know definitely online they pioneered a lot of this sort of attribution-based advertising, where they'd be buying video or display because they knew that, maybe no one clicks on it, but they could track that down the line people were, buying their stuff or doing whatever. So we should try and hook you up with the Rocket Internet guys, and maybe to have some insights of how that plays out on mobile. Any more questions for the panel? There's one over there, the gentleman with the glasses.
Hi, I'm Ash, founder of Fair Exchange. My question is about networks. It seems to me that it's becoming a two-horse race now with Twitter and Facebook being the key channels for mobile acquisition. How does that fit in with a strategy in terms of thinking about if you are launching an app, where would you focus yourself first? Because there seems to be a lot of fragmentation everywhere. And what's your opinions about that?
I think, again, this is why it's interesting if you're launching an app and if you don't have the experience to go through an agency that already has the experience, because, I mean, Fixu also showed it like pretty well. You have like many different channels that you can use. If your goal is to, again, acquire users that will retain and monetize in your app, it's not by going through like one or two channels that this will happen, but you have to try them all, and then to collect all the information, track everything, and then decide which one are working, which one are not working. Regarding like Facebook and Twitter, definitely those two are very important, but they're not the only ones. And also, like the experience have shown in the past that at one point, once you want to really like scale up and have more volumes on those two platforms, then usually the prices rises a lot as well. So, which is why it's always good to also like focus on other channels.
Yeah, I would say that running on Facebook and Twitter give you full visibility on what you're doing, because you're actually managing the campaigns yourself. So you can pay how much money you want to spend. You can see the optimization, and you can, you're the one that actions everything. If you go through a network, it's slightly more blind. You might buy on a CPI basis or a CPC, but you're not really controlling. You're giving that to a third party. So again, it would come down to how much money you have, what are your goals, are you just testing, or are you ready to, invest big money? So it comes down to testing, yeah.
Also, there's a question of scale and timing, depending if it's a product launch or an upgrade, or if it's the running rate. Might be wise to also combine networks at a given moment and look for fresh inventory. And that's a tricky one as well. Depending on where you are with your acquisition plans.
Yeah, and I would plug the exchanges as well. Again, looking for differentiated inventory and users, different devices.
Okay, well, that's about it for the panel. I'm sure everyone would like to have some lunch now, so please thank the panelists, and we'll see you after lunch in an hour's time.